Okay, so what we're looking at today is it's basically an autopsy, not of a person, but of a national crisis. We've got this transcript in front of us that is, well, it's candid in a way you just rarely get to see.
It is rare, yeah.
It's an insider's look at the 2022 protests in Iran, the Masa Amini movement, but from a perspective that, usually stays behind very closed doors.
It absolutely does. We're analyzing a talk given by Ali Shakuri Rad, and just to place him on the map for you, he isn't a royalist. He isn't some Western-backed opposition figure.
No.
He's a veteran of the Islamic Republic itself. He was a member of the Sixth Parliament. He's a reformist.
Which means, in theory, he wants to fix the system, not burn it all down.
Theoretically, yes.
Ah.
He is part of the political machinery, or I should say he was. And that's exactly what makes this autopsy so damaging. He's looking at the system he spent his life building and pointing out exactly where the organs are failing.
And he makes some claims that, honestly, they just stop me in my tracks. We're going to get into the role of intelligence agencies, the collapse of the political middle ground, and this really haunting story about a stolen bicycle that kind of explains the entire national mood. But I want to start with his theory on how the 2022 protests actually began. Because he suggests something that sounds, well, at first glance, like a bit of a conspiracy theory.
Managed protest theory?
Right. I mean, the standard narrative is that Masa Amini was killed, people were furious, and the streets just exploded organically. But Shakuri Rad is suggesting the intelligence institutions might have actually initiated the unrest. That seems incredibly risky. Why would a regime light a match in a room full of gasoline?
It sounds totally counterintuitive, I know, but in authoritarian statecraft, it's a known tactic. Think of it like a pressure valve.
Okay.
Shakuri Rad argues that the intelligence agencies, they knew dissatisfaction was peaking. You had retirees, teachers, workers. They were all angry. The pressure cooker was going to blow eventually.
So you trigger a smaller, controlled explosion to let off some steam.
A controlled burn to prevent a wildfire. That's the idea. And look at the timing he points out.
Right.
He believes it was scheduled specifically for the end of the university term. The logic is cynical, but it's sound. You let the students shout for a few days, get it out of their system, and then the holidays hit.
The dorms empty out, students go home.
And the movement just naturally dissolves.
It's cynical, for sure, but if that was the plan, it failed spectacularly.
Oh, catastrophically. As Shakuri Rad puts it, it slipped out of their hands.
And this is where his analysis gets really interesting, because he blames a specific factor for why that controlled burn turned into an inferno, and it involves Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah.
And this is a fascinating moment in the text because you have to remember who's speaking. Shakuri Rad is a reformist. So for him, the Pahlavi family they're the ultimate enemy.
The monarchy they overthrew.
Exactly. He calls Pahlavi polluted, hollow, claims he has no real substance.
He really doesn't hold back on him. He sort of frames him as just a puppet of foreign media.
He does, but, and this is the absolute key, he admits that when Pahlavi issued a call to action during those first few days, it worked. It worked in a way that shocked everyone.
Everyone.
The regime didn't expect it, the reformists didn't expect it, and honestly, even the organized opposition probably didn't expect it either.
So why did it work? I mean, if Shakuri Rad thinks the guy is hollow, why did millions of people listen?
Desperation.
Yeah.
Pure desperation. And Shakuri Rad admits this with a lot of, bitterness. He says the people just had nowhere else to turn.
The reformists, his own camp, were sidelined.
Completely neutralized. There was a political vacuum, so when people needed a rallying cry, they grabbed the only name they recognized.
Like the system cleared the board of all legitimate local opponents and then was surprised when people looked outside the system entirely?
Precisely. And the scale he mentions is just. It's staggering. He cites intelligence estimates, these are internal numbers, of 1.5 million participants.
1.5 million.
400 cities, 900 specific points of conflict.
400 cities. And that brings us to what he calls the security paradox. Because the regime's narrative during all this was very specific. This is the work of foreign agents. This is Mossad. These are sabotage cells.
Right, that was the line.
But Shakuri Rad looks at those numbers, 400 cities, and he asks a very simple but very damaging question. If there were foreign sabotage cells in 400 cities, where was the security apparatus?
It just cuts right through the propaganda. It presents a binary choice.
Yeah.
And neither option looks good for the state.
Okay, so what are the options?
Option A. The regime is telling the truth. Foreign agents successfully infiltrated 400 cities right under the nose of the intelligence ministry.
In which case, the security forces are just breathtakingly incompetent.
Right. I mean, heads should roll, commanders should be fired. You can't claim to be this all-powerful security state and miss a nationwide infiltration.
Okay, and option B.
Option B is that there were no foreign agents, that the security forces knew exactly what was happening, but the anger was just. It was organic and it was overwhelming. Shukuri Rad basically says you can't have two massive security institutions that claim to know every secret in the country, yet say they were blindsided by a network of this size.
So either they're incompetent or they're lying. But he goes even darker than just incompetence. This next part, I found this really difficult to read. He starts talking about the insider killing strategy.
Yeah, this is the most chilling part of the entire autopsy.
And he cites a journal article from Imam Hussein University. That's an IRGC-affiliated school, right? This isn't some Western paper.
No, this is internal academic work from within the system. And according to Shukuri Rad, this article actually discusses a strategy for suppressing riots called creating martyrs from insiders.
Creating martyrs from insiders. Explain the logic there. I mean, why would a security force want its own people dead?
Because it completely changes the narrative. If you have a peaceful protest, people marching, chanting, woman, life, freedom, it's very hard to justify using lethal force against them.
Is it bad?
It looks terrible, internationally and domestically. But if you could point to a dead police officer, or a burned mosque, or a killed Basij member, well, suddenly it's not a protest anymore. Yeah, it's a riot. It's terrorism.
And once you slap that terrorist label on it, the gloves come off.
Exactly. It grants you a license for brutality. You are no longer suppressing citizens. You are fighting combatants.
He gives a very specific example of this, the case of a man named Ruhollah Ajamian.
Yes. And we should be clear, we are just reporting Shukuri Rad's account here, but the details he provides are incredibly specific. He claims Ajamian was instructed to wear Basij clothing and just walk into the crowd.
Bait. He was used as bait.
That's the allegation.
Yeah.
And he says the cameras were pre-positioned, ready to film whatever happened next.
Wow.
So the trap is set. Ajamian's killed in the scuffle. The regime now has its martyr, but they also need a villain. They need to show that these rioters are dangerous to everyone, including the educated class.
So they frame a doctor.
A radiologist, specifically. Shukuri Rad suggests this doctor was selected to send a message to the entire professional class. You are not safe either. If you support these protests, we can come for you too. It's a strategy of terror.
It's manufactured chaos to justify restoring order.
And it effectively silences the woman life freedom movement by just turning the entire conversation into one about violence and security. It works in the short term.
But the long-term cost.
Well, that's what Shukuri Rad is terrified about, because when you use these tactics, you destroy any possibility of a middle ground. You burn every single bridge.
Which brings us to the political tragedy in this text. We have to talk about the president, Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian. Shukuri Rad calls him the middle force.
Or, maybe more accurately, the failed middle force.
Right. Shukuri Rad frames Pezeshkian not as an accident, but as a project of the supreme leader. What does he mean by that?
Well, in any crisis, a smart authoritarian system needs a buffer. You need someone who can step in, sound a bit more moderate, promise a few reforms, and absorb the public's anger so it doesn't reach the very top.
The lightning rod.
Exactly. And Shukuri Rad believes Pezeshkian was basically raised up to be that buffer, to lower the temperature.
But he says Pezeshkian burned himself. How?
He fell into a trap.
Mm.
And it's the intelligence reports again.
Mm.
Pezeshkian, according to this source, he believed the briefings he was given. He bought into the narrative about foreign-led riots and sabotage.
So he went on television and just repeated those lines.
He echoed the hardline narrative. And the moment he did that, he lost the streets. He alienated the very people he was supposed to be soothing. If your moderate sounds exactly like your hardliner, then you don't have a moderate.
It's a void.
Yeah.
And Shukuri Rad mentioned this missed opportunity here. He calls it the Morocco model. I wasn't familiar with this.
It's a reference to King Hassan II in Morocco. It's a model of survival, really, for a supreme leader or a monarch. The idea is this. The king keeps control of the big stuff, the sovereign levers.
The military religion.
The military, religious institutions, basic foreign policy. But he hands over the entire domestic administration, the economy, the healthcare, the schools, the day-to-day grind of government to the elected politicians.
So I keep the crown and the sword, you guys run the country.
And critically, if the country fails, you take the blame. It protects the monarch. Shukuri Rad argues that the supreme leader should have done this with Pezeshkian. He should have given him full authority.
That he did it.
No. The leader kept a tight grip. And because Pezeshkian had no real power and he repeated the regime's talking points, he became useless. The middle force was just destroyed.
And Shukuri Rad seems to think this is a fatal error, because now, without that middle force, you just have total polarization.
That is the societal autopsy. The text describes a society that is split into two completely hostile camps that can't even speak to each other.
He tells this story about a relative of his, a Basiji.
And this is important because he tries to humanize the other side. He says this relative is a good man personally. He's clean, he's not corrupt, he doesn't steal.
Yeah.
But ideologically, he genuinely believes the young protesters deserve to be killed, that they are enemies of God.
That is a terrifying disconnect. A good man wishing death on teenagers.
And on the flip side, Shukuri Rad quotes the youth.
Right.
They say, "We will burn any Basiji we see." They don't care if he's a clean one or a corrupt one. The uniform is enough.
So you have the state on one side, armed and ideological. You have the youth on the other, angry and desperate, and absolutely nothing in between.
No politicians to mediate, no middle ground, nothing. And that's why he quotes the old revolutionaries, people like Behzad Nabavi, who is 84 years old now.
And what does he say?
Nabavi says he regrets any revolution. He looks at this outcome, this deep societal hatred, and feels like everything they fought for was a mistake.
Shukuri Rad calls it the blackest day in Iranian history, a stain that won't be wiped away for decades.
It's more than just political polarization. It's a kind of moral fracture. When a society loses the ability to see the humanity in the other, you're in a pre-Civil War mindset.
This loss of moral grounding, it leads to the final story in the transcript. And honestly, I think this is the most powerful part of this whole deep dive. It's just a simple story about a bicycle.
It's 1979. The revolution has just happened. Shukuri Rad is young, he's a student, and he's full of that revolutionary fire.
And his father buys him a bike.
A pretty significant gift. He rides it to university. Now, normally you'd lock your bike up, right? Chain it to a fence.
Of course.
But Shukuri Rad doesn't. He leaves it unlocked.
Why would he do that?
Because of the revolution. You have to understand the mindset. They truly believed they hadn't just changed a government. They thought they had changed human nature itself. They had built a moral utopia where theft simply wouldn't happen anymore.
That is incredibly naive, but also kind of beautiful in a tragic way. He really believed the world had changed.
He comes back an hour later. The bike is gone. Stolen.
And that's the aha moment.
He says the blow wasn't losing the bike. It wasn't the money. It was the destruction of the belief. It was that sudden, cold, gut-punch realization that the utopia was a lie, that the revolution hadn't fixed anything fundamental about people.
The lock was broken, but not on the bike.
Exactly. And he connects that personal moment in 1979 to today. He argues that the entire Iranian people are having a collective bicycle moment. They aren't just angry about inflation or the hijab. They have realized that the moral promise of the entire system is gone. The bike was stolen, and they know it's not coming back.
And once you realize that, you never leave the bike unlocked again. You don't trust the police, you don't trust the president, you certainly don't trust the news.
Trust is the one resource you cannot manufacture.
Yeah.
You can manufacture a crisis, you can manufacture a martyr like we discussed, but you cannot manufacture trust once it's been shattered.
So where does that leave us? We have a managed protest that went rogue. A security apparatus that might be killing its own people to justify crackdowns. A president who failed to be a buffer. And a whole society that has lost its faith.
It leaves the system in a very, very brittle state. Shukuri Rad's warning is clear. You can suppress the streets with violence for a while. You can scare people into staying home. But without a middle force to act as a shock absorber.
There's no valve.
There's no valve. There's no controlled burn. The next time the pressure builds, there's just the explosion. If the gap between the state and the people is unbridgeable, then any stability you see is just an illusion. It's just waiting for the next spark.
It's a sobering look at the internal machinery of a crisis, and it makes you wonder how many other systems are operating with no shock absorbers, just relying on force to keep the lid on.
And how many citizens in the world are just staring at the empty spot where they left their bicycle, realizing it's never, ever coming back?
That's something to chew on. We would love to hear your thoughts on Shukuri Rad's autopsy. Do you buy the managed protest theory, or do you think that gives the regime a little too much credit?
And does that Morocco model actually work in the real world, or is it just a fantasy for sideline politicians?
Let us know. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.